Why is she always getting all the attention? Amara muttered, frustration lacing her voice. She thinks she's the most beautiful girl in this village, Kelechi added, rolling her eyes. Welcome. If you're new here, you're in for a treat. This is where we bring African stories to life, with rich storytelling, culture, and drama that will keep you hooked. Before we dive into today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. If you're already part of this amazing community, welcome back. We appreciate you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Do you think jealousy can destroy friendships? Let's talk about it. And of course, if you enjoy this story, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and let's spread the magic of storytelling together. Now, get comfortable, because this story is about to get very interesting. Chioma was the girl everyone in the village admired. She was beautiful, and her voice was even more captivating. Whenever she sang, people stopped what they were doing just to listen. It was as if her voice had magic, drawing everyone in. Men from nearby villages traveled just to see her. Some came with gifts, golden bracelets, fine cloth, and jars of palm wine, hoping she would accept their love. But Chioma was in no rush to choose a husband. She smiled kindly at everyone but kept her heart to herself. Amara and Kelechi, her childhood friends, watched all this in silence. At first, they were happy for Chioma, but as time passed, their happiness turned to jealousy. Why is she always getting all the attention? Amara muttered one day. She thinks she's the most beautiful girl in the village, Kelechi added, rolling her eyes. They never said these things in front of Chioma. Instead, they laughed and walked beside her as if nothing was wrong. But deep inside, their resentment grew. As more men came for Chioma and more people praised her, Amara and Kelechi could no longer ignore their bitterness. "We have to do something about her," Amara whispered one evening. Kelechi nodded. "Yes. We can't live in her shadow forever." And with that, their jealousy turned into something much darker. Every morning, the young women of the village carried their clay pots and walked together to fetch water. It was a routine they had followed since childhood, laughing, gossiping, and sharing stories as they made their way to the streams. But there was one thing about Chioma that never changed. She never fetched water from the Oyo stream. The village had two main sources of water, Oko stream and Oyo stream. Both were clean and fresh, and people could choose either. But no matter how hot the day was or how crowded Oko stream became, Chioma refused to go near Oyo stream. Whenever they reached the crossroads where the paths split, Amara and Kelechi always hesitated, hoping this time Chioma would change her mind. "Why don't we fetch from Oyo stream today? It's closer," Kelechi suggested one afternoon, balancing her pot on her hip. Chioma smiled but shook her head. "I can't." Amara frowned. "Why not? What's wrong with the water there?" Chioma chuckled softly, but there was something uneasy in her laughter. "My mother told me never to go there or use water from that stream." That was all she ever said. No explanation, no further details. Just a firm refusal. At first, Amara and Kelechi didn't think much of it. But as the years passed, curiosity gnawed at them. Why was Chioma forbidden from Oyo stream? Why did she obey this rule so strictly? They noticed that she never even accepted food or drinks made with water from Oyo stream. Even when an elder once offered her a cup of water, she politely declined. "This isn't normal," Kelechi whispered to Amara one evening. "What if there's something she's hiding?" Amara's eyes darkened with suspicion. Maybe that's why everyone loves her so much. Maybe there's a secret behind her beauty, and it has something to do with that stream. Their curiosity deepened, but at the same time, their jealousy burned hotter. One day, their envy reached its peak when a young man named Ibuka declared his love for Chioma. Ibuka was not just any man. He was strong, handsome, and well-respected in the village. Many girls, including Amara, had dreamed of marrying him. But Ibuka had eyes only for Chioma. "I have admired you for a long time, Chioma," he said boldly, stepping in front of her as she and her friends walked back from the stream. "I wish to marry you." Chioma smiled kindly but shook her head. "I am not ready for marriage, Ibuka. I hope you understand." Ibuka did not give up. He brought her gifts, fine beads, colorful wrappers, and even a carved wooden comb. But Chioma gently refused them all. Amara watched, her fists clenching at her sides. She had loved Ibuka for years, and now he was chasing Chioma like everyone else. "She doesn't even want him," Amara whispered angrily to Kelechi that night. "And yet, he won't even look at us." Kelechi sighed, feeling the same bitterness. "It's always her. It's as if we don't even exist." And then, as their resentment deepened, so did their curiosity about Oyo Stream. What if the reason she's so special has something to do with that stream? Kelechi asked one night, her voice low and serious. Amara's lips curled into a sly smile. "Then maybe it's time we find out." Little did they know, their search for the truth would lead them down a dark and dangerous path. Amara could no longer hide her anger. Every time she saw Ibuka staring at Chioma with admiration, her blood boiled. She had loved him for years, dreaming of the day he would choose her. But no, just like everyone else in the village, he only had eyes for Chioma. "She doesn't even care about him," Amara muttered bitterly as she and Kelechi sat outside their huts one evening. The village was quiet, with only the sound of distant drumming in the air. "She turns him down as if he's nothing, yet he keeps chasing her." Kelechi plucked at the hem of her wrapper, lost in thought. "It's not just Ibuka, Amara. It's every man in this village. They bring her gifts, they fight for her attention. But what about us? Are we invisible?" Amara's jaw tightened. "We need to do something. We can't let her take everything from us." Kelechi looked at her sharply. "Do something? Like what?" Amara's voice lowered to a whisper. "We need to get rid of her." Kelechi's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," Amara said, her voice cold and steady. "Chioma must go." That night, under the cover of darkness, Amara and Kelechi slipped out of the village, their wrappers tied tightly around their waists. They carried no lanterns, trusting the moonlight to guide their way. Their destination was a place whispered about in fear, the home of Dibia Okoro, the village's most feared native doctor. They walked for what felt like hours until they reached the outskirts of the village, where the trees grew thick and twisted. At the center of the forest was a small hut, surrounded by bones and strange carvings. Smoke curled from a fire inside, and the scent of burning herbs filled the air. Kelechi hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" Amara didn't answer. She pushed open the creaky wooden door and stepped inside. The native doctor, Dibia Okoro, sat cross-legged in the dimly lit room, his face hidden behind a mask of white chalk and red clay. He stirred a small pot over the fire, his eyes flickering toward the girls as they entered. "I have been expecting you," he said, his voice deep and raspy. Kelechi shuddered. How did you? I know many things, the Dibia interrupted. You have come because of Chioma. Amara and Kelechi exchanged glances, their fear momentarily replaced with surprise. Yes, Amara said. We want to know her secret. Why is she different? Why does everyone love her? Dibia Okoro chuckled, his laughter sending chills down their spines. He reached for a bundle of strange-looking leaves and tossed them into the fire. The flames crackled, and the smoke rose in spirals, filling the room with a strange scent. Then he spoke. Many years ago, Chioma's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Nkem, were desperate for a child. They tried everything, prayers, sacrifices, offerings to the gods, but no child came. Mrs. Nkem suffered greatly. Other women mocked her, and she cried day and night, begging the spirits to give her a child. The room seemed to darken as the Dibia continued. One night, she made a dangerous decision. She went to Oyo Stream, where the goddess of the water resided. She knelt by the riverbank and cried out to the goddess, offering gifts and pleading for a child. The flames flickered, casting shadows on the walls. The goddess listened. She gave Mrs. Nkem a child, but with one condition. Amara and Kelechi leaned in, their breaths shallow. The child must never set foot in Oyo Stream, the Dibia said, his voice heavy with warning. She must never fetch its water, drink from it, or let it touch her skin. If she does. He trailed off. Kelechi swallowed hard. What will happen? The Dibia's eyes gleamed. She will die. Silence filled the room. Amara and Kelechi stared at each other, the truth sinking in. So that's why she avoids Oyo Stream, Amara whispered. Kelechi's mind raced. That means... Amara's lips curled into a wicked smile. That means we know exactly how to get rid of her. They stood up, their fear replaced with something far more dangerous. They had the answer they needed. Now, it was time to act. Amara and Kelechi could hardly sleep that night. The secret they had uncovered burned inside them like fire. Chioma's entire life had been protected by one simple rule: never go to Oyo Stream. And now, they held the key to her downfall. By morning, their plan was set. They would make sure Chioma stepped into Oyo Stream with her own feet. The sun was high in the sky when the girls walked toward the stream, their clay pots balanced effortlessly on their heads. The sound of birds filled the air, and the warm breeze carried the scent of ripe mangoes from nearby trees. Chioma walked ahead, as usual, humming softly. Amara and Kelechi exchanged a glance. Today was the day. When they reached the familiar crossroads, where one path led to Oko Stream and the other to Oyo Stream, Amara stopped. Let's go to Oyo Stream today, she said casually. Chioma barely paused. You know I can't, she said, adjusting the pot on her head. Kelechi pouted. Why not? We've been going to Oko Stream for years. What's so bad about Oyo Stream? Chioma chuckled. My mother said I should never go there. But why? Amara pressed. Have you ever wondered if she was just being overprotective? Maybe it's just an old superstition. Chioma hesitated. She had never questioned her mother's rule, but it was true. She had never seen anything wrong with Oyo Stream. It looked just like Oko Stream, clear and flowing, yet she had always avoided it without understanding why. Kelechi stepped closer, lowering her voice. Chioma, nothing will happen to you. You are strong. You are loved. Why should a simple stream harm you? Amara folded her arms. Unless you think you're better than us? Are you too special to fetch water from Oyo stream like the rest of us? Chioma frowned at their words. Amara and Kelechi had been her friends since childhood. They would never lead her into danger, right? She sighed. Fine. Just this once. Amara and Kelechi exchanged triumphant glances as Chioma took a step toward Oyo stream. The closer they got, the heavier the air seemed to grow. The trees around the stream swayed as if whispering a warning. The water glistened in the sunlight, clear and calm. Chioma knelt by the edge, dipping her clay pot into the water. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, a cold shiver ran up her spine. She hesitated, glancing back at Amara and Kelechi, who smiled encouragingly. See, Kelechi said. Nothing happened. Chioma nodded slowly. Maybe it had all been a silly fear after all. Then it happened. As she lifted the pot, her vision blurred. Her breath hitched. Her skin prickled as if touched by ice. A sharp pain shot through her legs. She gasped, dropping the pot back into the water. Kelechi! Amara! Something's wrong. She tried to step back, but her legs refused to move. Her feet tingled, then burned. A strange sensation crawled up her body. She looked down and screamed. Her legs were disappearing. Her skin shimmered, shifting like water. Where her legs had been, there was now a long, silver-blue tail. No! No, what is happening to me? Chioma cried, her voice trembling. She reached for Amara and Kelechi, her hand shaking, but they only backed away, their faces pale with shock. The water pulled her in. She struggled, but it was useless. The current wrapped around her like invisible hands, dragging her deeper and deeper into the stream. Her vision darkened. Her screams turned into bubbles. And then she was gone. For a moment, the world stood still. The only sound was the gentle flow of the stream. Amara and Kelechi stared at the water, their hearts pounding. She's gone, Kelechi whispered. Amara swallowed hard. We should leave. And so they ran, back to the village, back to their normal lives, pretending that nothing had happened. But the village would soon notice Chioma's absence. And the gods were watching. The sun had long set when Mrs. Nkem realized something was wrong. Chioma never stayed out this late. She was always home before nightfall, carrying a filled clay pot on her head, her soft voice greeting everyone she passed. But tonight, the house was silent. The path from the stream was empty. Mrs. Nkem paced outside, glancing toward the village entrance. She told herself that maybe Chioma had stayed behind to talk to a friend. Maybe she had stopped to help an elder. Maybe. But when darkness fully settled over the village and her daughter had still not returned, panic took hold. She rushed from hut to hut, calling out, "Has anyone seen Chioma?" Neighbors stepped out, concern growing on their faces. One by one, they shook their heads. By midnight, half the village was searching for her. They carried burning torches, calling her name into the night. Men waded through the Oko stream, thinking she might have slipped and fallen. Women checked behind trees, peering into the shadows. But there was no sign of Chioma. No footprints. No clay pot. Not even the sound of her voice. The next morning, Amara and Kelechi stood among the worried villagers as if they, too, were clueless. She was with us yesterday at the stream, Amara told an elder, forcing her voice to tremble. But she left before us. We thought she had gone home. Kelechi wiped her eyes as though holding back tears. Maybe something happened to her on the way. Their words spread through the village, but something felt wrong. Some of the elders whispered among themselves. How could Chioma disappear just like that? She was not the kind of girl to wander off. Mrs. Nkem, her eyes red with grief, clutched her wrapper tightly. My daughter would never run away, she said firmly. Something is not right. 4 days, the village searched. Hunters combed through the forest. Fishermen checked the riverbanks. But no one found a trace of Chioma. The only ones who knew the truth were Amara and Kelechi, and they told no one. At first, the village was filled with sorrow. The elders declared 3 days of mourning. People gathered in front of the Nkem family's hut, comforting Chioma's mother and father. But as time passed, something began to change. With Chioma gone, the men who once admired her began noticing Amara and Kelechi. The same men who once chased after Chioma now greeted them warmly. Some even brought them gifts, beads, cloth, and even palm wine. It was exactly what Amara had wanted. She was finally the center of attention. Kelechi, too, enjoyed the way people started treating them differently. They were no longer Chioma's friends. Now, they were the most admired girls in the village. One evening, as they walked through the marketplace, a group of young men laughed and chatted with them. This is how it should have always been, Amara whispered to Kelechi, a satisfied smile on her lips. Kelechi nodded, though a small part of her felt uneasy. Yes, she said. Finally, we matter. But the village had not forgotten Chioma, and neither had the gods. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, Mrs. Nkem knelt before the village shrine. She placed a bowl of white chalk before the altar, lifted her hands, and cried out to the gods. O great spirits of our land! If my daughter is alive, bring her home. If she is dead, let the truth be known. Her voice carried through the night, reaching the ears of the unseen. And in that moment, the winds shifted. A low murmur filled the air, like a whisper from the spirits. The leaves trembled. The earth seemed to hold its breath. Something was coming. Something that would reveal the truth. And Amara and Kelechi were not prepared for it. The village remained eerily quiet after Mrs. Nkem's visit to the shrine. But something had changed. The air felt heavier. The trees rustled even when the wind was still. The night seemed darker, the silence deeper. The gods had heard her cries. That night, Mrs. Nkem sat outside her hut, staring at the sky. Her heart ached for her daughter. She had begged, she had mourned, and now all she wanted was the truth. As the stars shimmered above, a sudden gust of wind rushed through the village, shaking the huts and putting out the oil lamps. Then, a voice. Soft at first, then louder. Chioma's voice. Mama! Mrs. Nkem gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The villagers stirred from their sleep, stepping out of their huts in confusion. The wind carried the voice again, rippling through the night like a whisper from the other side. Mama! I did not leave. Women clutched their wrappers, whispering prayers. Men exchanged uneasy glances. The spirits had awakened. And Amara and Kelechi felt it first. The haunting begins. Amara awoke to the sound of soft singing, a melody so familiar it made her blood run cold. Chioma's voice. It was coming from outside her hut. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she sat up, her breath shallow. The room was dark, but she wasn't alone. A shadow flickered in the corner. She froze. "Chioma," she whispered. The singing stopped. The shadow moved. Amara screamed. She scrambled off her mat, knocking over a clay pot as she ran outside. The village was still asleep, the only sounds coming from the distant crickets. But something was wrong. Then she saw it. At the far end of the village, by the path leading to the streams, stood a figure in white. Hair dripping wet. Skin glowing under the moonlight. Eyes locked onto hers. Chioma. Amara's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, gasping. The spirit took a step forward. Amara scrambled backward, her chest heaving. We didn't mean to." The wind howled, swirling dust into the air. From another hut, Kelechi's scream pierced the night. The villagers woke up, rushing outside with lanterns. "What is happening?" the chief demanded. Before anyone could answer, Amara and Kelechi ran into the center of the village, crying, shaking, their eyes wide with terror. "It's her!" Amara sobbed. "She's here." "Who?" an elder asked. "Chioma." Kelechi screamed. "We killed her." Gasps echoed through the crowd. The confession. The chief stepped forward, his face grim. "Speak." Amara and Kelechi fell to their knees. "We tricked her into going to Oyo Stream," Kelechi admitted, tears streaming down her face. "We knew she wasn't supposed to go there. We knew she would die." "We were jealous," Amara cried. "She got all the attention. We just wanted her gone. We didn't know." She broke off, sobbing. Mrs. Nkem collapsed to the ground, wailing. "My daughter! My Chioma!" The villagers erupted into anger. "You killed her because of jealousy? You brought a curse upon us. How could you do this?" The chief raised his staff, silencing the crowd. His face was hard with fury. "You have spilled innocent blood," he said. "You have taken away a child who did no wrong. The gods will not forgive you, and neither will this village." He turned to the warriors standing nearby. "They are no longer welcome here. Banish them at once. Exile and eternal fear." The next morning, Amara and Kelechi were forced out of the village. They were given no time to pack, no final words. The villagers threw dust at them as they walked, shouting curses. They were sent into the wild, where the spirits roamed, where no one could protect them. But their punishment was far from over. Every night, as they tried to sleep under the open sky, Chioma's voice haunted them. Her song echoed through the trees. Her laughter rippled through the wind. And when they closed their eyes, they saw her, standing by the river, waiting. For vengeance. For justice. Forever. The village was silent. Chioma was gone, and now everyone knew why. The truth brought sorrow, but at least her family no longer had to wonder. She had not run away. She had not disappeared without reason. She had been betrayed. Mr. and Mrs. Nkem grieved for their daughter. She had been their only child, their greatest joy. Now, their home felt empty. Mrs. Nkem sat outside every evening, staring at the path Chioma used to take home. Mr. Nkem, a man of few words, spoke even less now. The villagers mourned with them. Everyone loved Chioma. She had been kind, gentle, and full of life. People shared stories about her, how she always helped others, how her laughter brightened the day, how her voice could make even the birds stop and listen. To honor her, the village gathered at Oko Stream, the one she had always chosen. They placed flowers in the water and whispered prayers. Mrs. Nkem, though heartbroken, found comfort in knowing the truth. She still missed her daughter every day, but she no longer waited by the door, hoping she would return. If you were in Chioma's place, would you have trusted Amara and Kalechi, or would you have sensed their jealousy?
Why?
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching. Check out the channel for more engaging stories. Thank you.